Who are the best defenses in the NFL entering 2025? Welcome, football fans, to another BLV NFL rankings video. In this video, I'm ranking every NFL defense from the worst to the best, number 32 to number 1. When it comes to defense, one important thing to understand is that last year's results, last year's statistics, yeah, they matter. Continuity matters. Coaching matters. Players playing within the same scheme obviously does matter. But performance of defenses is not like performance of offenses. These things tend to regress. They change, they alter, and they drastically see different results. So this is a projection, a prediction of the best defenses in 2025. 2024 obviously matters, but I'm looking at personnel, coaching, scheme, and why a defense can be great in 2025. So, before we get started, you know what to do. Gronk, spike the like button if you enjoy these BLV NFL rankings. It's the only way, if you like the video, that I know you actually enjoy these rankings. My next set of rankings will most likely be my roster rankings for every NFL team, which is my favorite video that I make every year in terms of rankings. So, Gronk, spike that like button. And don't be a jabroni. Subscribe. Let's kick it off with the worst defense in the NFL entering 2025. And that defense is the worst defense from last year. Mitch, you just spent a minute talking about why last year doesn't matter for this year when it comes to defenses. But when you're 32nd in almost every single statistic that is known to humankind, you are still 32nd if you didn't really alter or change your personnel. In fact, you might have gotten worse in the most impactful position, the edge rush position. The Carolina Panthers still have the worst defense entering 2025. And I don't think there's any defensive coordinator I feel worse for than Evero. How much help did he truly get? Yeah, he got his boy Derek Brown back. But other than that, this defense does not have a lot. Yes, they added some depth pieces. They added some nice rotation players like Tershawn Wharton and Bobby Brown. And I like the Trayvon Moehrig pickup. And sure, they have J.C. Horn at corner. But they are deficient at safety, at linebacker especially. They might have the weakest linebacker group in football, or at least the most unknown. They're in the conversation. They don't have a real legit 7+ sack guy. DJ Wonnum is their best edge rusher on paper. That's not great. Pat Jones. Really? They're counting on rookies to be their most impactful influence to pass rush, or at least change in their pass rush. Maybe their interior is strong, and maybe that helps them not get absolutely run over by offenses each and every week. And Derek Brown returning should make them at least adequate against the run. But in terms of rushing the quarterback, there are problems. In terms of covering people outside of the guy that J.C. Horn is covering, the nickelback spot is a problem. So across the roster, it's a problem, okay? Looking at last year, it was a problem. They were historically bad. So I don't think they'll be historically bad this year, but I think they will be bad this year. That's why I have them at number 32. Okay, at number 31. Otherwise known as the second worst defense in the NFL entering 2025, that is the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders are at 31. Maybe surprising to some, But if you actually looked at the Raiders' depth chart, you would kind of understand where I'm coming from. Also, there's this weird thing going on with Pete Carroll's influence over the defensive scheme that I felt was really the strength of the Raiders in recent years, along with Max Crosby, was Patrick Graham. Like, I really felt like that might have been the best thing Josh McDaniels ever did for the Raiders, is bring in Patrick Graham, and then maybe also the Josh Jacobs season that he had. But other than that, I feel like Patrick Graham has brought about a solid defensive foundation scheme, and actually, I think above the level of talent they have played in recent years. But looking at Pete Carroll, he looks like he's going to be bringing in some level of influence to his Seattle scheme, right? And those concepts, and that's at least what we've seen from preseason action. The Niners were kind of talking about that. That's a little concerning, in my opinion, because I feel like that defense is outdated, and it's one of the reasons Pete Carroll was removed from Seattle. Now, the Raiders do have Max Crosby, and it's difficult to rank a Max Crosby defense as the second worst in the NFL. You have to be bad in other places, including the corner position, where your number one corner could rather be a third-round developmental rookie in Darian Porter, or sort of a bust in Eric Stokes from the Packers. You have probably the worst starting nickel corner in football in Holmes. The safety position regressed, although I like Jeremy Chin. I feel like he's not as good as Trayvon Moehrig, in my opinion. Carolina stole him. The linebacker position definitely regressed, and I feel like it's made up of a group of guys that are old and not in their prime, like a Landon Roberts, who's a good run stuffer, sets the tone, but limited in coverage. Pratt, who fell off the face of the planet for the Cincinnati Bengals last year. And then Devin White, who hasn't been good in years now. Devin White is lost out there constantly. Maybe a scheme change will help him. Who knows? But it feels like that guy's been bouncing around team to team and he hasn't found a role, and now all of a sudden he'll play for the Raiders? Okay. The defensive line outside of Max Crosby, we have Malcolm Kuntz, who's a big question mark because he's coming off major injury, although a talented player. Tyree Wilson, I actually think is growing on a lot of people, including myself. I think he's actually underrated right now. Watch out for him. But if Adam Butler is your best defensive tackle on your team, you have serious issues. So there could be concerns about the interior of the defense as a whole. The linebackers, their limited range and coverage and athleticism, the corner's ability to actually play. Like, there are a lot of problems with the Raiders. They are going to have a great season from Max Crosby, who dominates and sets everyone else up for success up front. And they're going to have some schematical success from Patrick Graham to be anywhere near average. Like, this unit is a bunch of scraps. So the Raiders, I think their defense is going to be the reason why they don't live up to the potential that maybe the offense from afar people believe that they have, right? A lot of people actually like the Raiders this year, and I think the defense is a reason I'm not that high on the team. I just don't see the talent at really any level beyond Max Crosby. I'm just being honest. At number 30, I have the New Orleans Saints. The New Orleans Saints have more talent from front to back than the Raiders. My concern about ranking the Saints over the Raiders is that, one, they don't have a player like Crosby, but secondly, they don't have a coach like Graham. I'm a little concerned about Brandon Staley. Brandon Staley, once upon a time, did get a head coaching gig, which Patrick Graham has not received, because of his defensive prowess. Now, I wonder how much that had to do with some of the personnel in LA, like Jalen Ramsey at his peak, Aaron Donald at his peak. That certainly helps, having two Hall of Famers in the front and the back of your defense at arguably the two most important spots. Brandon Staley in recent years has put together a pretty poor Charger defense. At times, they were decent, right? But then he was let go. more so because he was a terrible head coach. He went to San Francisco as more of a consultant, didn't really seem to have any real influence over the Niners, and if he did, it was negative. I didn't see anything impactful from his direction. So overall, I look at the Saints and I say, I'm not sure how this personnel, going from a Dennis Allen defense to a Brandon Staley defense, how that's actually going to make them better. Specifically at linebacker, I feel like Demario Davis and Werner are both good in that Dennis Allen scheme where they're unleashed as blitzers, they get in the backfield and they make plays as run stuffers. And due to Davis's age, I wonder if he has the range to still be able to play in like a zone-heavy defense. And I wonder, Brandon Staley he feels like he plays a lot of soft coverage, two-shell defense. Their corners might be a little bit better in this defense because they're not going to be asked to play on islands and man up as much. And I feel like that's going to help them maybe loosen the influence of their athleticism because they're not the fastest or overall best like man coverage archetype. The safeties, Justin Reed is a great pickup for any defense. They lost Tyrann Mathieu. They brought in Blackman to replace him. Defensive line-wise, they're very weak in the inside, specifically against the run, so I could see teams having influence or being able to run the rock on them. Cam Jordan is older than dirt. Chase Young is just fine. Carl Granderson is good, but he's not a sack specialist, so they really do lack pass rush if they're not going to be a blitz-oriented team, which Dennis Allen did bring about with this defense. Like, he was very good at third down sub packages, third down confusion, simulated looks. Staley, I don't know, man. Like, he more so, I feel like, specializes in the back end of the defense. So I feel like the front is going to suffer a little bit. But I could be wrong. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of questions here. And it feels like they don't really have a singular stud, although they do have good players like Granderson, Davis, Reed. And they're also going to be dealing with an offense that really doesn't do them any favors. And there's a lot of old guys on this defense, and that could lead to regression. That could lead to wear and tear, wearing down as the season goes on. So the Saints are tricky to figure out defensively, but I just don't see any area where they're going to be great. Run defense, pass rush, coverage. I don't know what they hang their hat on. I don't know how this scheme works with the Saints. So I have them at number 30. At number 29, the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons, I felt like would be higher here, but they're not. And I think it's because I don't love the front. I think it's one of the weakest in the NFL. James Pierce could be the guy that unlocks this defense and unlocks this pass rush. I am very low on Jalen Walker, specifically as a rookie. I don't know how much impact he'll actually have as a rookie because he's a developmental edge rusher, and that's where they want him to play. I'm also very confused from a coaching standpoint about how these two entities will get along. You have the Ulbrich mentality of the Robert Saleh, pin your ears back, jet style, 49er style defense, in conjunction with Raheem Morris's style of defense, which are feeling like two different styles of defense. So those two guys are having to get along as the head coach and the defensive coordinator. They did bring in Leonard Floyd. That might help just in terms of the depth of the pass rush. They did lose Grady Jarrett, but they did bring in Morgan Fox. I'm not sure that's a positive. David Onyemata is wearing down inside, and it feels like their interior is the weakest it's been in a couple years. Unless some of these younger guys do step up. We'll see. The linebacker position, I really like Caden Ellis, but it does feel like they're not very good in the coverage department there. And then the safeties, obviously, have Jesse Bates. I actually like what they did with the safety position here, drafting Watts, bringing in Fuller. I think they should be improved there. The corners, a little bit questionable outside of A.J. Terrell, specifically at nickel. So the main weaknesses I see with the Falcons, I'm a little unsure how good their run defense will be. I do think they're a good blitzing team when they get to it, but at the same time, I feel like they're lacking in the middle of the field in their coverage, whether it be the nickel position, the linebacker position, and I just feel like you can pick on them in the passing game. So while Morris is a defensive coach, you would think they would be higher on this list, and maybe due to the 2 first-round picks, you could see them jumping up this list. I'm just not sure that I love how the defense is built, how it correlates to the scheme, what the scheme's actually going to look like, although I actually like some of the individual prospects or players involved in the defense, like Jesse Bates and Caden Ellis. So I have them at number 29. At number 28, the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals are a defense that they look atrocious right now in the preseason. I know they don't have Trey Hendrickson, and they haven't played exactly all the starters. But through the first couple games of the preseason, they look no better than they did last year. And last year, everyone knows they were pathetic. They were really bad, were the Bengals on defense. But when you look at them on paper, I feel like there is a lot of reason to be a little moved, inspired, hopeful for this defense. If they do get Trey Hendrickson on one edge with Shamar Stewart on the other edge, that sounds pretty fun. And Stewart has been having a great training camp. He's been dominant. And I do know that he's going to be great in the run game because he's just so athletic and so strong that he will be able to set an edge. I also have loved the additions of TJ Slayton and Oren Burks in the front seven. I also think they have a slightly deeper rotation on the defensive front than people give them credit for, like Miles Murphy and Osai and even Jenkins. Of course, they still have BJ Hill. So this is a defensive line that with the ace piece, the A-plus guy in Trey Hendrickson, it makes everyone else around them better. Now, if they lose Trey Hendrickson, they might be the worst defense in football because their pass rush, even if Stewart is good, could be really, really lacking. But if you have Hendrickson, along with 2 good run stuffers inside, along with a young promising first rounder, along with quality depth, that's where I get kind of excited. Knight at linebacker, we'll see how good he is as a rookie. The corners, I've talked at length about DJ Turner, and I think he will break out. Cam Taylor-Britt is a solid CB2. If he just plays a little bit more consistent, I think that's good. I love that Dax Hill is moving to the nickel position or the star position back where he played at Michigan, and I think that will be highly influential to the athleticism, the range, and the speed of the defense, and maybe even the versatility for what they can call in terms of blitzes and schemes up front. And then the safeties are a bit of a concern in terms of range and speed, but they are smart players. So the Bengals just feel like a team that, first of all, they need to be able to lock in and stop the run this year. Last year, they were a little bit against the run, better against the run than I think people thought. The pass was a real problem. If those corners can take a step and maybe this new defensive coordination and new look can give them some subtleties that change or develop some players and give them an edge on third down, like really all they need to be is situationally sound. If they can be good on third down, they can be good in the red zone and a little bit bend but don't break at times and just solid against the run, that's a good enough defense for this team to have plenty of success. So they're not going to be a stellar defense, but I'm thinking they will improve a little bit, even if I rank them 28. Again, I just think like how they've looked so far, how they looked last year, I need to kind of see it before I believe it with these Bengals a little bit. Like I need to actually like be able to hold on to something of hope. So at number 28, the Bengals. At number 27, the Jacksonville Jags. Now Jacksonville's at 27. Unlike the Bengals, I watched a little bit of the Jags defensively early in this preseason. And I'm not trying to say that preseason is overall completely influencing my opinion of these defenses, but they were the second worst defense by most metrics last year, only better than the Panthers, who were like pathetic, like we talked about. So Jacksonville being 27 is a little bit of a jump. Now they have a new defensive coordinator, And really, when you look at Jacksonville, they don't have like a terrible, no good roster on defense. They have Aluakon and Devin Lloyd at linebacker, Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker on the edge, maybe even something left of Eric Armstead in the middle. They do have Tyson Campbell when he plays as a pretty good corner. They did sign Jordan Lewis, who's a good nickel corner. Jerrion Jones was inspiring as a rookie corner. The safeties are bad. But overall, that's a decent defense on paper. They have a number one pass rusher. They have a really good all-around edge player. If they can kind of just be a little bit better in the interior on the defensive line, be a little bit more creative up front with their pressure package, and be just a little bit more stingy in the back end and flexible and versatile, I feel like they'll be a lot better than people think, because I don't think this defense is untalented. Like, if Campbell's healthy, I think that goes a long way. They did improve their safety depth through the draft. So I think a lot kind of is dependent on the coaching and the direction of where they take this defense, because I certainly see some good things. And I actually think the secondary, specifically corner group, could actually be pretty good. So at number 27, Jacksonville. At number 26, the Tennessee Titans, who were a very strange defense last year. They were second in the NFL in yards allowed, but in a variety or major other statistics, they were like a bottom 5, bottom 10 defense. So a very strange statistical defense last year. They were also pretty good against the run overall. But I look at Tennessee and I see some big holes, specifically that linebacker group, which is, I know I said Carolina might be the worst. Like, Tennessee is probably the most unknown at the middle linebacker, inside linebacker position. Maybe they have potential. Who really knows, right? At the edge position, they don't have legitimate pass rushers. Arden Key is a decent player, but he's essentially DJ Wonham. Maybe a little bit better, but same situation as Carolina. They don't have big-time pass rushers on the edge. What they do have is they do have a lot of size on the edge. And I do think that the Titans rank 26 because, like I said, they were second in the NFL in yards allowed for some weird reason. But they do have things that I like about the defense. I think they're good against the run because they do have a absolute mammoth in the middle, right? And they also have Jeffrey Simmons. So that D-tackle combination is one of the better, specifically against the run in football. It's hard to run right up the middle on them. And they also have very big edge rushers like Draymond Jones, for example. I think they brought in Jahad Ward. Like, they've got some beefy guys that can set the edge, and I think they're going to be really difficult to run the ball on. And then their corner position, I think it's pretty good if L'Jarius Sneed is active. Now, my problem, if L'Jarius Sneed is not, that is completely altering the defense, right? Because Brownlee looked pretty good as a rookie as a CB2. McCreary is pretty good in the middle at nickel. I really love Amani Hooker. And they don't have bad safety depth with Woods and Diggs. But overall, like, if Sneed is missed, all of a sudden their coverage is out of whack because now everybody moves a position. That's the problem with the lack of perimeter corner depth when you do have a number one ace corner that you paid and you traded for and you're expecting to be a dog and he rather doesn't play to that level or he's hurt. So the lack of pass rush and concern in coverage with the lack of depth is concerning. But if Sneed plays along with a strong run defense, I can buy into good scheme, maybe a little bit of simulated looks up front, get some pressure, Jeff Simmons getting pressure, Arden Key getting pressure. Like, there's enough there where I'm like, okay, like, I could see how this would work along with strong run defense, good tight coverage. Like, the Titans could be a better defense than I think, but a lot of it is dependent on health. So that's why I have them at number 26 with the Tennessee Titans. It's a big L'Jarius Sneed question, essentially. If I knew L'Jarius Sneed was Chiefs L'Jarius Sneed, they might be like 15th on the list. It's really that big of a jump. But with the whole, like, unreliable situation, the coverage could be thrown out of whack, which doesn't help the pass rush. So, like, it's really a tricky conversation. Next, At number 25, the Washington Commanders. Now, one thing that I have faith in with the Commanders is the coaching. You have Dan Quinn, who's a very good defensive coach, and it feels like ever since leaving Atlanta, he went to Dallas, and I think he really coached that defense up to an elite level with Micah Parsons. Then he went to Washington last year, and they were like a fine defense. They were below average in a majority of metrics, but considering their talent, I felt like he did a pretty good job. I look at this defense, and once again, I don't love the talent. I do think the linebackers, if Bobby Wagner continues to play at the high level, that is the strength of the defense. Bobby Wagner as the communicator and the leader, along with Frankie Louvu and his versatility. I love that ability right there. The defensive front, I like the depth, and there's a lot of veterans like Dietrich Wise and Clelin Ferrell and Von Miller and Daron Payne, and there is a little bit of upside in the interior as well with Newton and Kinlaw. So I like the deep rotation, even if they don't have a dog up front. Payne maybe could be that, but we haven't seen that consistently. Von Miller could be the Dante Fowler from last year. It is concerning that they lost Dante Fowler because he had 10.5 sacks, and I'm not sure if they have a 10.5 sack guy on their roster. Also, like, Dorrance Armstrong's a good player. I would say solid player at the very least. Their safeties are a little whack, but I feel like you could see a little bit of a development from Martin. I think Harris fits the defense for what they're looking for in terms of, like, man-to-man tight end responsibilities, coverage, overall, like, corner safety hybrid abilities. And then their corners could be the strength of the defense. If Lattimore is Lattimore, I'm not sure if he is, but if he is, then okay, you can open my eyes there. Trey Amos, I believe in. I think he'll be a good CB2 in year one. And then you've got guys like Jonathan Jones, and you've got Mike in the middle. So I feel like they have the potential to be a very feisty defense where they make everything difficult, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're a good defense, if that makes sense. Like, I think they have the capability of playing a lot of tight man-to-man coverage, making life difficult on defenses, being able to scheme a variety of pressure, being able to send linebackers in funky looks. I do have concerns about run defense a little bit because that was a big concern last year, and I think it continues to be a bit of a concern. I am concerned about who is the dog pass rusher in a four-man rush setting. If Von Miller is not that guy anymore, maybe he is, maybe he isn't. So, and Lattimore, like, is he still Lattimore? So a lot is like Von Miller, Lattimore, old questions, and they are old on defense. But I would say, like, Washington with Dan Quinn scheming it up, I think they'll find ways situationally to get enough pressure. I think they'll play tight, feisty coverage and make life difficult. And I think that if they can just be a little bit better against the run, they'll be a fine defense. I don't think they're a good one. I don't think they have high-end potential because they don't have a lot of talent. But I feel like they have enough depth for it to not be a total disaster, right? At number 25. At number 24, Titans, I already talked about you. At number 24, the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins are the defense that last year they ranked pretty well. Like, at the end of the year, they were top 10 in a few different metrics. And I do think, like, on paper, they have one of the best pass rush units in football. The problem with that is that two of their guys have been constantly injured. And you kind of wonder, are they the still same guys, right? Like, Jalen Phillips, injured. Bradley Chubb, injured. Are they the same guys that they used to be? If they are, the Dolphins will probably be better than this ranking. But if they aren't, or anywhere close, all of a sudden the Dolphins could be like a really bad defense. Like, Chop Robinson is really good. They just signed Matt Judon, which that is honestly more concerning than anything, because Judon, like, sure, he can be a veteran fill-in, and he'll be able to understand the defense. And I believe the defensive coordinator is a former Raven disciple, so there probably is a connection to the defense there somewhere. So Judon will be fine in a depth situation. But if you have to count on him because Chubb isn't healthy or because Phillips isn't healthy 100%, that's where I'm a little concerned, because Judon was really bad for the Falcons last year. The defensive line, they lost Calais Campbell, who was an absolute stud last year for them. They replaced him with a rookie in Grant, who I think will be a good run stuffer in year one. Zach Sealer is really good. So looking at the defensive front, their linebackers I think are underrated. Jordan Brooks I thought had his best NFL season last year. I think that Dodson can cover well, although not good against the run. They do have good depth there. I think Willie Gay is on the roster as well. So looking at their front seven, man, like if they're all healthy, that's a good unit overall. Linebackers, edge rushers, defensive tackles, they have really a good mixture. The thing is that the edge rush position is a complete question mark, and the secondary is atrocious. Like they could be so bad that they really can only play like soft zone, you know? Mike Hilton, the old man, is playing nickel. I don't even know if I can remember who their perimeter corners are set to be. They do have Storm Duck on the outside. That's a real person, not a Madden-created player. The safeties, Minkah Fitzpatrick, he has really regressed. Can he get back to himself in Miami? Melon Fonwu, I don't know. So I look at Miami and I'm just like, yeah, if the pass rush is really awesome, this could be a better defense than this ranking. At the same time, I think there's huge concerns about if they can cover anyone or if it's just Swiss cheese. And then like the health concerns too. And they just have the vibe of being a defense that falls off. They just have that vibe. I don't know if you feel it as well, but I certainly feel that with the Dolphins. At number 23, the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys were one of the most disheartening to rank. The reason I say that word in particular is I see the potential in this defense, but there are a lot of concerns about health. This could be a defense that this year is a bit shaky. Maybe they get good near the end of the year, and then next year they're actually really good. Now, here's my concern is Overshown is out for a good period of the season, and he is a stud linebacker, and they don't have good linebackers without him. Kenneth Murray is not good. So their linebacker position, which is a position that Matt Eberflus, who's the new defensive coordinator, former Chicago head coach, that's his specialty, right? When he was in Chicago, they spent big money on TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds because they need good linebackers in this defense. And I just don't think that the scrap heap players from Chicago and, the former first round pick busts are going to make this linebacking core work without Overshown. The interior defensive line is still a concern against the run. As good as Odighizuwa is, he can't do it alone, and even he has a weakness against the run. He's an exquisite pass rusher, but they need a lot more out of that first round bust out of Michigan that plays the nose tackle position. Solomon Thomas is their third defensive tackle, I believe. I just don't love the rotation of defensive tackles. I don't love their potential ability to stop the run, especially inside. So that's concerning. Their edge depth chart is really good. If Parsons is back, which is also a huge concern and question, if Parsons is back, then they have him, Fowler, and Zaraku from the draft. They've got former second round picks at, Nealand, Williams. They've got a lot of depth there where I feel like they can make that work and they can be a devastating pass rushing, edge rushing team. And I think that works for Eberflus's defense really, really, really well. They also have a corner question. Is Trayvon Diggs healthy? Is he not? Is Deron Bland playing inside, outside? I believe he's playing outside. Okay. Who's the nickel corner then? Is he any good? The safeties, they're solid, Hooker and Wilson, but they're not spectacular. So I just look across the defense, I'm like, there could be a really good pass coverage team here. There could be a really good pass defense team here. They could be really good rushing the quarterback. They could be really good covering people if they're healthy. At the same time, they could be terrible against the run to where it doesn't matter. And they also have Parsons holding out. Overshown's injured. Diggs is injured. Are they playing? Are they not? New defense, new scheme, another year, third year in a row. So Dallas is just really tough, man. They have a lot of potential, but they also have a lot of areas where you could be massively and majorly concerned. At number 22, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I'm going to take a little bit more of a positive leap in the direction here. This is a bit of a tear break, I feel like. Tampa Bay. My problem with Tampa Bay is that I like the players, but I feel like they underwhelm on the field as a unit, at least recently. I think a lot of that has to do with the scheme. I think a lot of that has to do with the lack of ability to communicate in coverage. I think a lot of that has to do with the lack of pure four-man pass rush. Now, what I love about the Bucs is I love their ability to stop the run. I feel like typically they're very good against the run. That's because they have a scheme that packs the box. They have an assassin linebacker in Lavonte David who just absolutely scoops up any runner in the middle of the field. They have Vita Vea in the middle who just clogs the middle up. And then they've got good edge setters, including Yaya Diaby. My problem is last year they were decimated in the middle of the field by quarterbacks. I mean, just absolutely picked apart. Now, some of that might have to do with the fact that Winfield was on and off injured, and they took advantage of that. If Winfield is back, that could really maybe clog those holes up or take away some of those looks for quarterbacks. But still, I feel like their corner position is fine, but it's not great. And they just play so much soft zone. They barely play man. They just give up a lot of easy completions. Typically, you can take advantage of their blitz-heavy defense and throw screens and play misdirection off of it. And I just feel like, yes, there's teams that they play well against because of their scheme and because of how they stop the run. Like the Eagles, for example. But there's other teams like the Niners or the Rams who just absolutely rip them to shreds. So I feel like the Bucs are somewhere as a middling defense. If they can get more out of their Hassan Reddick, more out of Braswell, more out of this pass rush edge depth chart, that would be promising. There are concerns about the depth of safety, the depth of linebacker beyond Lavonte David, beyond Winfield. Can Tyke Smith step up? Can McCollum get better? Can Dean stay healthy? Will these rookies like Morrison and Parrish pay off? Can Kalijah Cansey take a step? He's a bit of an inconsistent guy that's a force as a pass rusher, but also a bit of a liability as a run defender. So I see good things, but I also just see holes all over the place in terms of like scheme, how teams look to take advantage of them. Can they really take a step forward as a pass rush unit? If they're allowed to, then maybe that allows them to play better coverage. So at number 22, I still feel like the Bucs' weakness as a team is on defense. There's no doubt about it. At number 21, the Cleveland Browns. The Browns, I kind of thought I was going to rank a lot higher than this, but then when I really looked at the depth chart and I thought about the defense, I feel like they're very Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward reliant. I feel like if either one of these guys goes down, they're in a really tough position. Specifically, if Denzel Ward goes down, they already lost Martin Emerson. All of a sudden, they might have the worst corner depth chart in the NFL if they don't have Denzel Ward, who obviously is a shutdown, lockdown corner on an island, and that's how they play. So, I look at Cleveland, I'm like, they love to play man coverage. They love to be aggressive up front. They almost, blitz too much, it feels like, for the personnel that they have. With Myles Garrett, you shouldn't really have to blitz that much. You know what I'm saying? But it feels like Schwartz, he has played this reliable or consistent style that has been good for the Browns, but also has burnt them on occasion as well. They feel very vanilla in a way, you can consistently rely on what they're going to do. They play a lot of man coverage, and it feels like without Denzel Ward, that's going to be a problem. They already maybe have holes in the back end. Their safeties are not great. They have depth there. They're not great, though. Delpit, they're okay. They're fine. Linebackers, they lost JOK, who was a stud. They lost Jordan Hicks. That also sucks. And then you look at their depth chart now, it's like Devin Bush. Okay, he kind of played well last year, but we'll see. They have a rookie in Schlesinger. Mason Graham, do we know he's a good player yet? Maybe if he is, him and Myles Garrett could be destructive and dominant. But if he isn't, that's going to be tough. And it just feels like they're pass rush, from a four-man perspective. Malik Collins is fine. but they don't have a Zadarius Smith anymore. They don't have another edge rusher. Like, can McGuire be that guy? Like, who can step up and help Myles Garrett when pass rushing goes down? Like, Mason Graham, can he do it? Like, so it just feels like they're too two-player reliant, and their scheme is very consistently understandable, dissected by offenses. And if you can steer away from Myles Garrett and you can take care of Myles Garrett and you can throw away from Denzel Ward, you should be all right. Like, you should be able to move the ball. So at number 21, the Browns. At number 20, Tampa, I already talked about you. The New York Jets are at number 20. The Jets and the Browns have similarities to me in terms of they're going to be a man coverage-oriented team this year, which is drastically different from the defense that Robert Saleh runs, where Robert Saleh would mix in man coverage because of the corners that he had in New York. But at the same time, he's more of like a quarters coverage type of guy. So I do wonder how Aaron Glenn's influence of this defense is going to go down, because I think that the personnel is a bit different. But I would also say, like, who's the better defensive coach here? I would lean towards Robert Saleh, to be honest. I also think they've lost some pieces, like DJ Reed, for example. Javon Kinlaw, for whatever he's worth, he left as well. CJ Mosley, got old, let go of him. I feel like the Jets, I look at this defense and I think it's thin. And that's my problem with it. They were also very poor against the run last year. Felt like a lot of teams could run on them. A lot of teams got leads against the Jets and were able to just run the ball. And when I look at the D-line, Will McDonald's a good pass rusher. He hasn't proven to be an all-around three-down edge player. I like him, but I feel like he needs to be better setting that edge. Okay? And more consistent against the run. Quinnen Williams is a dog, and he does his best. But beside him, they have a massive D-tackle question. Who is that guy going to be? Jermaine Johnson was really good, but he's coming off an Achilles injury. Achilles. 11 months later. Achilles. So with him going down, they don't have the depth that they used to have on the edge. Like, they got Clemens. That's about it. They don't have a very good deep edge rush, right? So it feels like a D-line that Quinnen Williams, you have to rely on him a ton to stuff the middle and to get pressure from the middle. Then you have Will McDonald, and it feels like if Will McDonald doesn't get to the quarterback or Quinnen Williams doesn't get to the quarterback, like, I'm concerned about Jermaine Johnson. The linebackers are good. Quincy Williams, right? Sherwood, they were very good. Sherwood was great last year. Quincy Williams is an awesome player, but I do wonder how the scheme change affects them. The safeties are not great. They're certainly not household names. Andre Sisco, I like the fit as a single high safety in this Aaron Glenn system, but he's been up and down throughout his career. They rather have a rookie or Tony Adams playing at the other one. Brandon Stevens was terrible for Baltimore last year. Maybe he's better in this system, but that looks like a liability as the CB2 compared to DJ Reed. Sauce Gardner's awesome, and I think he'll be great in this system. I'm not worried about that. I feel like Michael Carter is a good underrated nickel player, but what if Sauce goes down? Like, again, this is like a Denzel thing. Denzel Ward thing. Like, if he goes down for Cleveland, what's the corner situation? If Sauce goes down for the Jets, what's the corner situation? I just feel like depth on defense matters so much, and the scheme change, the lack of reliable for the Jets pass rush and defensive line, I just think there's a lot of holes here, like not, the ones that we haven't seen in previous years. So at number 20, the Jets. At number 19, I have the Chicago Bears. The Bears are at 19. The Chicago Bears are, I think, just like not as high-end talented as the Jets or the Browns. Like, they don't have a Myles Garrett. They don't have a Denzel Ward. They don't have a Sauce Gardner. They don't have a Quinnen Williams, right? But they do have a lot of solid players. And they do have, I would say, Jalen Johnson's awesome. I think their linebackers, especially coached by Dennis Allen, could be very good. TJ Edwards, Tremaine Edmonds. And then I like the defensive line. I don't think it's great. I think it's solid. They do have a little bit of a pass rush problem. Like, if Montez Sweat isn't getting there, can Javon Dexter get there? Who's going to get there? Right? Even the guy they signed from the Colts, Odenigbo, is not a pure pass rush type. Grady Jarrett's a little bit older, but I do like the D-tackle rotation is solid, and I think they're going to be stronger against the run. I feel like Dennis Allen is a really good defensive coach, and what I like about the mix here of the personnel and the coach is that Allen can sort of scheme pressure. The Bears have a good secondary, so I like that they're going to be able to rely on their secondary, Kyler Gordon at nickel, Jalen Johnson on the outside. We'll see what Tariq Stevenson gives them, but, you know, he's kind of like in that same mold of like a Paulson Adebo, kind of like high risk, high rewards sort of physical corner, right? And the safeties, Kevin Byard, Brisker, they've got some safeties too, like Owens, they've got some depth there. So I just feel like even if a guy gets injured, they're not in a terrible position. They're solid all the way around at all three levels, and they have a coach that I feel like is going to help them, especially as a third down defense, a pass rush defense, which was maybe like the biggest area of concern for them last year. They were also a little weak against the run last year, but I feel like that also won't be as poor. So at number 19, the Bears. At number 18, I have the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts are like the Bears to me, where they don't have a ton of absolute studs. Like DeForest Buckner is a stud, and depending on your argument with Franklin, like he's a good player, but they just have a very good defensive line, a very deep defensive line, specifically at the edge position, where I feel like they have 4 or 5 guys that could play starting snaps on teams. Latu is a potential guy that could break out in a big way. I know they're going to be really good against the run because they have Buckner, Stewart, and they have Franklin, who scoops up all the tackles. They do have a little bit of a depth concern at linebacker. If Franklin goes down, how does that go down? They have a change in defensive coach and defensive coordinator that could be good in Lou Anarumo to give them a little bit more versatility in coverage, a little bit more creativity as a defense, which I feel like in recent years and for a while they have lacked. I feel like all the other coordinators they've had have been very vanilla, very simple, and they've relied on that 4-man rush. But now that Anarumo has a 4-man rush, has a D-line that could stop the run, and he can be creative in the back end, that's where he could create magic. There is a lot dependent on Charvarius Ward, who is getting old and had a pretty poor year last year. We'll see how he responds. I do love Moore at the nickel position. I do feel like they've got good corner depth. They just signed X all of a sudden. Howard's still playing football. I didn't know that. Bynum and Cross is low-key a pretty dangerous safety duo with the free safety, strong safety combination of Cross's just ability to tackle and make plays, and then Bynum's ability to be rangy and cover. So to me, the concern is that they're just good and they're not great. Like, the concern overall is that they're just fine. Like, maybe they don't have a marquee edge rusher that can really go off if Latu doesn't take that step, because Pay is just good but not great. Epicam returns, but it's from a major injury, so we'll see. But I know they're going to be rock solid against the run. I know they're going to be more creative. I feel like they have less holes at safety now. I feel like they are stronger or deeper at corner, even if they're not fantastic. I'm not going to say that, but they should be at least the same, if not a little better. So I feel like the Colts around 18 feels fair. They're around the middle of the pack, I feel like. At number 17, I have the Arizona Cardinals, which some people are extremely high on the Cardinals. Like, some people think they'll be a top 10 defense. Some people would rank them closer to 22, 23. I have them somewhere in the middle, to be fair, because I see the avenue for success, but I also see maybe the failure of what could go down. So I'm a little bit on the edge here, walking the line with the Cardinals. But first of all, I think that the secondary has a lot of potential with Will Johnson on the outside, Williams at the nickel position, and then Baker and Thompson. That's very promising. Even Taylor Demerson, I believe. So they've got a really good mix of secondary players. Also looking forward to seeing Max Melton here develop as well. But I could see Will Johnson being an absolute defensive rookie of the year candidate right away at corner. And we know what Williams can do. We know what Buddha can do. And I feel like that secondary is going to be very creative. And what I love about the Cardinals overall is their scheme. I just really like watching it. They're very diverse. I think they're the closest defense in football to the Vikings in terms of their end of the spectrum coverages. So they rather like to send a lot of 8 men into coverage, which the Vikings do more than anybody, or they like to zero blitz as much as anybody. So it's a very like Madden defense. Like they're dropping everybody or they're bringing everybody. Like that's like a big Madden thing, right? The Cardinals like to do that, and I think it's effective. And they're also just very like the way that they rush their guys, their blitz angles, their loops, their stunts, very creative, very fun to watch. I feel like they've been doing better with less in recent years under Jonathan Gannon. The last 2 years under his tutelage, they've been doing more with less. Now that they have more, this should influence them to be a better defense. Now that they have a Dalvin Tomlinson and Calais Campbell to take care of that middle of the field run game. Right? Now that they have a Josh Sweat who can actually win a one-on-one on the edge, right? Baron Browning, underrated player. They have the first-round pick returning, and Darius Robinson should be a good role player. Ojulari returns. They've got actually a lot better depth than a lot of people would think. Zaven Collins. The linebackers are not my favorite. Mac Wilson's always been a little underrated in my opinion, but I just feel like the Cardinals are very creative. I feel like going to be very fun in sub packages and third downs. And I feel like they're going to be very chaotic, which is my style of defense. I really like creativity. So at number 17, the Cardinals. At number 16, the Green Bay Packers. The Packers are a defense that I can't quite understand how they ranked so high in a variety of metrics last year. When I watched them, it didn't feel that way. You know, they did play really well in the playoffs against the Eagles. I felt like that was maybe the toughest opponent the Eagles offense played throughout the playoffs. Like the Packers defense did a damn good job. I will say that the Packers, as a run unit, really improved last year. And I do feel like that had a lot to do with the scheme change. And the weird thing about the Packers, I think they're good in positions that not a lot of people value that much. And I think that's why maybe they slip under the radar as a unit. Because I think they're very good at linebacker. First of all, I think Edgerrin Cooper could be a superstar. I think Quay Walker is better than his metrics or his grades give off. I would also say that Eric Wilson is a really good third linebacker. Their safeties, they have 3 or 4 good safeties as well, including the superstar Xavier McKinney, who I will say if they do regress, which I have them regressing here obviously to a middle of the pack defense, because I'm concerned about corner, I'm concerned about the pass rush. The main areas of your defense that you're supposed to be good at to be an elite top 10 defense, which they're weirdly not that good at, and still were a top 10 defense, which is really strange. But, maybe that spoke to something that regression could speak to. But I feel like McKinney really influenced this defense. Williams, Bullard. These guys, I feel like at safety and linebacker, I think they do really well in the middle of the field. They've got great range. I feel like they're very good tacklers. I feel like it's a very fast defense. The defensive line, Kenny Clark is still a good player. Rashawn Gary is a very good player, although, for whatever reason, their pass rush just is not as good as you would think. And maybe Devontae Wyatt really needs to take that step forward. Maybe Lucas Van Ness really needs to take that step forward. He's a little bit of a question mark. They also have Kingsley coming off the edge, who's a pretty good backup. Brooks is a pretty good third defensive tackle or situational run defending tackle, which is why they let go of Slayton. So, corner is a bit of a problem. They don't have great corners. Their corners are fine. Hobbs, maybe he'll be more healthy than Alexander. Give them a little bit more presence on the outside. And as I brought up in my secondary rankings, I like the versatility of having 3 corner possibility, 3 safety possibility, the hybrid nature of what that could bring in coverage and in rundown situations and how they are coached. But I will say the coaching was impressive. First year for I think it's Hafley is how you pronounce it, out of Boston College. He brought a lot of cool blitzes to the table. I thought that the run defense and the run lanes really improved. I felt like the overall creativity of the front improved. I just feel like they lack in the ability to play one-on-one coverage. They lack in the ability to win in a four-man rush setting, and that really limits your potential as a defense. So I think they're a rock-solid scheme with a lot of talented guys, but they lack in the most important areas, which is why I have them at number 16. At number 15, the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams are a defense that I think will rise this year. I am trying not to be too high on them. I feel like 15 is right. Their pass rush, I just feel like is going to be absurd. You look at this unit, and they have Jared Verse on one edge. They have Kobe Turner. They have Braden Fisk. Now they bring in Poona Ford to help them against the run, right? Byron Young is a good player. I just think this pass rush or this front, this defensive line is one of the best in the NFL. I think they can get after you in the run game. I think hopefully Poona Ford really makes them a better run defense. The linebackers, I think, are a little concerning. Landman has been fine throughout his career. Spites was pretty good as a rookie, but we need to see a jump there. Their secondary is kind of slow, in my opinion, and there's just no one elite here. There's good guys, like Lake is a good player, Curl's a fine player, Kitchens has potential, Witherspoon played above his head last year, Darius Williams has consistently been a number 2 corner in football, but I just think they're limited to a lot of zone. But that being said, I feel like Shula did a phenomenal job, and they got better and better and better and better as the year went on. So they're a very young defense that grew throughout the year. And by the end of the year, they felt like a top half defense because their pass rush was dominant. They play a lot of sound, soft zone, which limits big plays. They rally, they tackle. And I like that defense for them because they have such a good front 7. Or front 4 or 5. The linebackers are a bit spotty, but I do think that there will be games when you don't get to the quarterback where you'll be able to dice them up, which is a bit of concern. Also, like their run defense does have to respond this year. Can Poona Ford truly make them a better unit? Because last year, in the biggest games, they seemed to give up too many runs to Saquon Barkley. But it's Saquon Barkley, so I'll give them a little bit of a pass. At number 14, I have the Los Angeles Chargers. So we're going from LA to LA, Rams to Chargers. The Chargers were the number 1 scoring defense in football last year. And in a variety of advanced metrics, they were also like a top 10 defense. I wouldn't say they were number 1, but they were a top 10 defense. I don't think they were as good as they played last year or as good as their results. I think they took advantage of a relatively weak schedule. And against better teams, they didn't play as well, like Baltimore or the Bengals or even Houston in the playoffs. But they did have some really good showings, and I think they're one of the best coached defenses in football. And kind of like the Packers, they're good in positions that you wouldn't necessarily want to be best at. I think they're really sound at linebacker. I think Henley is an excellent coverage linebacker. He's one of the most underrated defensive players in the NFL. I think Denzel Perryman is an assassin against the run. And their safeties are awesome. Derwin James is fantastic. He's a chess piece player. You have Elijah Molden who can do it all. And Gilman is also good and sound deep in coverage. Their young corners stepped up in a big way, and Hart and Still, and should develop. And they have a lot of depth at corner as well. And they play a lot of zones, but they rotate their safeties really effectively. They keep quarterbacks on their toes. They throw different schemes at you up front. I feel like their run defense is a little bit of like an up and down spotty issue now that Poona Ford has left. Their pass rush from a pure 4-man perspective is a little iffy. Like Khalil Mack is older than dirt. Can you keep relying on him? Thule's a good player, right? But they kind of feel like a defense that needs to scheme up pressure to get home oftentimes this year. And I just worry about the front. So I couldn't rank them too high because I'm really worried about that front 4. I'm really worried about that front overall against the run and the pass. But I feel like the back half of the defense, in conjunction with the creativity, in conjunction with the way they're coached, how fundamentally sound they are, how they tackle, how they fly around. I feel like the Chargers are physical. They play with an edge. So I give them 14. I'm just concerned about the main area where I feel like a defense needs to be dominant to be a very, very good defense. At number 13, the Buffalo Bills, who, like the Chargers, I feel like from a fundamental level are always well coached under Sean McDermott. It's in the big games against the best quarterbacks and the best opponents where Buffalo typically struggles, unless it's Lamar Jackson in Buffalo in the playoffs. But feels like, whether it's been Pat Mahomes most of the time or Joe Burrow, or like one of these big time offenses, even last year, like Stafford, the Rams, for example, the Lions got going near the, that second quarter. Like they were getting decimated last year. That was the worst Bills defense, I feel like, from a statistical perspective, that we've seen under Sean McDermott. I could be wrong, but I feel like that's accurate. I don't know if it was the worst that we've seen. I feel like that end of the year 2023 defense against the Chiefs was pretty pathetic. But the 2024 defense was better in the playoffs. But like not really. I mean, like, but they've dealt with a lot of injuries the last couple of years. But you look at them from a personnel standpoint, they have concerns at safety. Outside of Taylor Rapp, they're trying to find their other starter at safety. They have a little bit of a concern at CB2. If Hairston can't step up into that position, they might have to throw an old wily vet like Tre'Davious White there. But they do have an absolute stud in Christian Benford. They do have a very good nickel corner in Teron Johnson, and they do have a lot of depth. At linebacker is that X factor for this defense. It always has been. You think about McDermott from his Carolina days, Thomas Davis, Luke Kuechly, right, Shaq Thompson. Then you go to Buffalo, where Matt Milano has been an elite player when he's been on the field. Bernard has been a Pro Bowl caliber linebacker at times. And it feels like one of their deeper, stronger positions. Williams, even maybe Shaq Thompson, adding some depth to that position. But I feel like if Matt Milano and Bernard are healthy, this defense could be back in that elite category or back in the top 10, flirting with that. The defensive front, good news that Joey Bosa has remained healthy so far. If Joey Bosa is Joey Bosa, that could be one of the biggest X factors in the entire NFL and AFC if he can provide a consistent three-down force along with Gregory Rousseau and Ed Oliver. I think one of the big problems about Buffalo is they're fundamentally sound. They can cover at linebacker. They've got an ace cornerback in Benford. They're good and deep on the D-line. They're good as a penetrating run defense, but they can be overpowered at times due to the size of their D-line and their linebackers. And also, I feel like they don't have an absolute stud up front. They don't have Myles Garrett, TJ Watt. They don't have I guess you could say Rousseau is good, but they don't have Chris Jones. They don't have one of these guys, right? I wouldn't even say they have Zach Allen or Nick Bonito. I think that Rousseau and Oliver are good, but I wouldn't put them at the top 10 in either position, right? So at number 13, the Bills are very, very sound, very solid, but they really need Hairston, Bosa, some of these guys to really step up. That being said, they're deep. They're always good. I need to see them play great in a big game. At number 12, the San Francisco 49ers, who by every account and every statistic were a bottom 10 defense last year, outside of yards allowed pretty much. They were actually a really good defense in yards allowed in a variety of metrics. But they were often a defense that bled a slow death. They would bleed out, so to speak. A lot of teams would just dink and dunk and manufacture or even run manufacture their way down the field. And that was frustrating to watch because it keeps the ball away from a very good ball possession offense. But when you look at the Niners this year, I think they're going to be much, much better. First of all, from a fundamental coaching standpoint, their coach really is going to bring it in Robert Saleh. I've already seen very promising signs in the preseason with what he's going to provide. I think that also bringing in Gus Bradley to help Robert Saleh is a good idea because these two guys are very well connected in their fundamental thought of what their defense should look like. And it is the 49er defense. It is the Seattle defense. It is this same tree of defenses, right? So I like that. But I love the young talent here. And then obviously you have game-changing players. You have Nick Bosa off the edge who demands double teams. You have Fred Warner, who's the best linebacker in the NFL. And you even have like good corners on the outside in Lenore and Green. But I think the young guys are really going to make the difference. Also, a trade that they made for Bryce Huff, I think could make a massive difference in passing situations. He's a phenomenal pass rusher, and Robert Saleh has gotten 10-plus sack production out of him and a big contract from Philadelphia that didn't work out. But he's on one edge as well on third downs. The first-round pick, Michael Williams, he's going to play outside and inside depending on the down and the distance. I think that CJ West and also Collins could help them stuff the run in the middle. And I really do like their defensive line in terms of their edge depth. I think it's very, very good. Their linebackers, I'm looking for big things out of D. Winters. I've always been a big fan of him. I love how he plays. He plays like a mini Dre Greenlaw. He's a absolute crazy person, kind of like Al Shair. Their young safeties as well. Mustafa will return. There's good things out of Seagal. And then Upton Stout. So a lot of youthful names, a lot of unknowns, but with Robert Saleh coaching them up, and from what we've seen and what we've heard from the preseason and the training camp, I think that this could get back to being a top 10 defense, depending on the health of Bosa and Warner. But I think the secondary is super underrated, and I feel like they're going to get pressure with Nick Bosa and Huff and Williams. So at number 12, the 49ers. At number 11, the Detroit Lions. The Lions have a very good, solid defense with a lot of really good players. I mean, Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph at safety is probably the marquee, one of the best safety positions in the NFL. You've got Jack Campbell and Alex Anzalone at linebacker. Even beyond that, a pretty solid depth chart. You've got Aiden Hutchinson up front, McNeil when he returns. Those are all very good foundational pieces. And then you really don't have a lot of weaknesses. And that's what I like about the Lions. They do have a little bit of depth concerns on the edge. Like, they don't have great edge 2, edge 3, edge 4. But I feel like their D-tackle position, even with the injuries, is still pretty solid. I feel like they have good corners. No real weakness that you can take advantage of in coverage, whether it be a Meek Robertson, Terrion Arnold, or DJ Reed. None of them are phenomenal, but they're NFL professionals at each spot. And yeah, I think that I wonder how the scheme will change and alter, if they'll still play as much man as they did under Aaron Glenn, if they'll still blitz as much as they did under Aaron Glenn. And I even wouldn't mind this defense to go up and sign like Zadarius Smith again or something to really boost them over the top as a pass rush, 4-man rush. But Hutchinson changes the math up front for this defense, changes the pass rush prospects of this defense. I expect big things out of Jack Campbell this year. I think the Lions are always typically solid against the run. They tackle well. They play hard. And it really comes down to, I like how they play too. They're feisty in coverage. They're not phenomenal as a defense, but I just feel like they're very well prepared. And they're young. They're in their prime. They're just good. Like, they're not dominant in any area. They're just all the way around solid. So at number 11, the Lions. At number 10, the New England Patriots. My Patriots take the 10th spot, and I've even seen them ranked higher than this by other people. So if you're going to hate, you can hate, but I'm not the only one. The Patriots defensively have always been good for a majority of my life. There's been seasons where they have stunk. Now, I will say that last year was the worst Patriots defense I think I've ever seen. Maybe not. I mean, the 2011 defense was really, really, really bad. But the Patriots are typically good on defense. And even in the years where they sucked, like 2022, 2023, specifically I want to say it was 22, they were a really good defense. And something just completely fell off with the defense. 2022, 2023, like they were a top 10 defense, I want to say. And Gerard Mayo became the head coach. Bill Belichick left. That could have been it. Or it could have just been they simplified the defense. They didn't prepare as well. All that sort of stuff. Personnel, maybe not quite spectacular, but they were able to get by under Belichick's tutelage and coaching. And they were still very, very good. Like, For example, they were like one of the best run defenses in football in 2023, and they completely fell off in 2024. That's just an example, right? And then, they bring in all this talent. So they brought in a ton of talent and like legitimate good NFL players at every position. So first, you bring in Milton Williams, the highest paid Patriot of all time at defensive tackle. He is a pass rushing phenom. So you add him to Christian Barmore, that is all of a sudden a dominant defensive tackle duo. Harold Landry is a 10-sack professional. He's had 9+ sacks, I believe, like 4 different seasons. He's played under Mike Vrabel previously, obviously, in Tennessee. And then you have, I've heard amazing things about Kayvon Chason, who had a great breakout for the Raiders. Maybe they should have kept him in that defense. Keon White is a good inside-outside guy. And Robert Spillane is, I think, one of the most underrated linebackers in the NFL. I'd certainly have him around the top 20. Christian Gonzalez is a game-changing shutdown island corner. And Carlton Davis can play on an island in man coverage, but now he's a 2 and not a 1. And you've got Jabril Peppers. So I feel like the Patriots defense is, what I love about them is I think they're going to be really hard to run the ball on. They have a lot of guys that can stop the run, whether it be Landry, Barmore, right? Spillane. They've got different guys that can stop the run. They can play man coverage and be really in your face, and they can just match up with teams, which I think is something that is very hard for a lot of teams to do. We've talked about this on previous already throughout the video. The Patriots can match up and they can play man and they can just absolutely wear you down. And then I think they're going to be very creative with their blitzes, their schemes. This is a Patriot, Mike Vrabel style defense. I assume that they can rush for, but they can also blitz. And that's a dangerous combination. And I think they're going to have a lot of versatility in their coverages. So it's a creative defense. It's a game plan specific defense. It can play man. They can stop the run. I think this is a top 10 defense in the NFL this year. At number 9, the New York Giants. The Giants should be a top 10 defense. If they're not, there's something seriously wrong. They have a absolutely ridiculous pass rush. They have Abdul Carter, who I think as a rookie could get like 12 sacks if he plays enough. They have Brian Burns, who's still absolutely awesome. Dexter Lawrence is the best nose tackle in the NFL. They have Chauncey Golston is like their 4th edge rusher. They have Kayvon Thibodeau. They have Roy Robertson Harris. Another Alexander was a mid-round pick who looked pretty good. Like, man, they've got so much talent up front. It's actually absurd how much talent they have in the pass rush department. And that's really difficult to block. Like, on any third down, you could see Brian Burns, Abdul Carter, Dexter Lawrence, and Kayvon Thibodeau. Like, good luck. Like, seriously. Then you've got Bobby Okereke, who's a good linebacker. Linebacker depth is eh. Safeties, I really like the potential of Holland and Newbin together. I like Phillips at nickel corner. I like Adebo as CB1. That's a huge improvement with Adebo and Holland. And they're not going to be a disaster giving up big passing plays downfield. And it's going to be really hard to complete those anyways because there's going to be a guy in your face the entire game. And as long as they can kind of like fix their run defense from last year, for whatever reason, it wasn't as good as you would think given the personnel. But Dexter Lawrence makes a massive difference there because he got hurt. I think they're a top 10 defense. As long as they get you in situations where they can rush you, they're going to be dangerous. At number 8, the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs don't have nearly the talent of the Giants. I think they probably have around the talent of the Patriots, but they're just so well coached under Steve Spagnuolo, and I just love their defense for the modern NFL. I feel like they're so scheme diverse. I feel like they're situationally very good. I feel like they can game plan to game plan, change what they need to do, morph into something different. You know, all year they might suck against the run statistically, but then in the biggest game of the year, they can stop the run. It's just like the way they're taught and the way they line up. And they feel like they can go to a different like look or style in any given game. But they have the blitzes that cause confusion in big situations. They have a stud in Chris Jones, who dominates. They have George Karlaftis, who's almost a stud, a very good player up front. So they've got two guys that can really get after it to the quarterback. They've got awesome linebackers that really allow the nucleus of the versatility of the defense, including Leo Chanel, Nick Bolton, and Drew Tranquil. They've got really good cornerbacks, and I think they can play man or zone, especially with the versatility of Trent McDuffie and how he can play inside or outside. I really like Watson. I think Christian Fulton was a good pickup. Their safeties, I think, will be fine. It's not exactly as good as it used to be, but it's still fine. And they've got a lot of depth in the secondary. I really like teams that really put an emphasis on a lot of bodies in the secondary. And yeah, the Spagnuolo is just a very, very, very good coach. And I feel like with Chris Jones, with Nick Bolton calling the shots, they've got a very good defense. At number 7, the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings are at number 7. Brian Flores is a genius. He might be the best defensive coach in the NFL right now, especially when you consider, you look at this cornerback group, you look at this secondary, it's nothing special on the surface. The front 7 is spectacular. I think it's one of the best in the NFL, especially with the additions of Allen and Hargrave. You give off Grenard, Dallas Turner, Andrew Van Ginkel. You have Cashman. You have Pace. You have a bunch of studs up front. And that is obviously going to be good for their run defense. That's obviously going to be great for their pass rush. And I just think Flores finds a million different ways to get a man free in his blitz packages. He finds a million different ways to confuse quarterbacks in his coverage rotations, in his safety rotations, in his blitz and drop looks, in his amoeba looks. Like, he's just so good with that stuff. Like, it doesn't even really matter that their corners on the outside are not all that good as long as they can make a few plays a game and tackle well. Like, so at number 7, the Vikings are here because of their scheme and because of their pass rush. That's really why they're here, I think. So at number 7, the Vikings. At number 6, the Seattle Seahawks. Mike Macdonald is also an incredible defensive coach, and I expect the best Seattle season defensively in recent years in 2025. I love their front, specifically their interior defensive line. I expect big things out of Byron Murphy. You have Leonard Williams. You have Jonathan Hankins. You have Jerron Reed. It's a really good interior 4. You have DeMarcus Lawrence coming to town with what he can do setting the edge and still maybe even situationally inside rushing the quarterback. You've got guys like Nwosu and Hall and Mafe, and I think it's a really underrated edge rotation as well. Ernest Jones in the middle. Don't love the linebacker depth. Safeties are really good, really promising in Nick Emanwuri, but then you also have as well, Julian Love is awesome. Kobe Bryant's a good versatile piece. Woolen, Witherspoon. Like, I feel like they can play just enough man when they want to. I feel like because of the safeties, they can do a lot of funky stuff. Emanwuri gives them a lot of range and versatility. Love gives them just a dog and a great communicator. And Bryant's kind of like a matchup player in some ways. And then I just feel like they're going to be able to win against the run game with all the size and beef that they have. And they've got enough athletes from the edge position where they can send a lot of funky blitzes too. So, like, this is a McDonald defense through and through. They've got all the pieces that you would look at from Baltimore and say they might have that, maybe even more, depending on the position. So at number 6, Seattle. At number 5, the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers are typically always a good defense. They get a lot of sacks, they create a lot of pressure, and they create a lot of turnovers. Now, with the Pittsburgh Steelers, I will say that they have just the best pass rush in the NFL. They've got Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, Herbig, Highsmith. They drafted Derek Harmon, Benton. This is a ridiculous front. And they are going to get so much pressure and generate so many stops just from their front alone. But I also love the speed of the linebackers. Peyton Wilson, along with Patrick Queen, having phenomenal range, and when put in the right position, can be very good players. I expect big things out of Wilson this year. Safeties, not the best for them, but Deshaun Elliott makes a ton of plays, especially as a tackler and a player roaming across the field. But the big change in Pittsburgh has been the corner position with Darius Slay and Jalen Ramsey. I think Ramsey is going to be so good in Pittsburgh. as a nickel corner. I just feel like he is just that veteran that the Steelers get every once in a while, and he's just a perfect fit for what they want to be and do. And I also love that the Steelers have become more of a man coverage-oriented defense, or at least opened up the possibility of being more of that. But they also have like these savvy veterans that will be great in zone coverage, and they've got a phenomenal pass rush. And as long as they don't lose TJ Watt, they should be an elite defense. They're absolutely awesome. So at number 5, the Pittsburgh Steelers. At number 4, the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles are still an elite defense. Vic Fangio, again, one of the best defensive coaches in football. They have a lot of youth in key positions, including Quinyon Mitchell at perimeter CB1, Cooper DeJean at nickel corner. They've got Jahad Campbell at linebacker along with Zach Bond. And then they have Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Nolan Smith, a lot of Georgia Bulldogs, a lot of guys that are young in their prime or entering their prime right now. Ajomo is another one that could step forward and be the next Milton Williams. Hunt could be maybe not the next Sweat, but he's young, he's up and coming. So they've got a lot of youth there. I also love how they've addressed some of the edge depth with guys like Uche and Ojulari, and the corner depth of Adoree Jackson and Jacorian Bennett, and they have Kelly Ringo, and it just feels like they have a lot of depth in the positions that they're weak, which I like that philosophy, right? Nakobe Dean, I don't know if he'll play this year, but he's also there at linebacker. So they have a really strong linebacker group. Zach Bond, to me, is the guy that doesn't get enough credit for this defense. Like, he was phenomenal last year, like absolutely filthy. Like, his coverage ability, and then he's also a great blitzer because he's a former outside linebacker. Like, he's really, really good. Jalen Carter is an absolute monster, and he's going to make everyone around him better, including Nolan Smith, who should have a breakout season this year. Jordan Davis, I'm still kind of waiting for a breakout season from him. Quinyon and Cooper can kind of shut down their two positions, but they play a lot of those quarters coverage, tree stuff, cover sixes more than anybody in football. Like, they're very good at matching the route trees and being able to just like communicate. Like, they're so good with their different coverages, and Fangio doesn't blitz a lot. Like, they're very coverage oriented. They get there with their 4-man rush. We'll see if that 4-man rush can still be as spectacular as last year, but man, they are very, very, very good. There's really no way that you can attack them necessarily. They're very good at tackling in the middle. You can't really screen them that well. You kind of have to pick on maybe their safeties, their CB2 through the pure passing game, which a lot of teams can't really do that well, right? Because you have to deal with their pass rush and all that sort of stuff. So at number 4, the Eagles. At number 3, I have the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens, I think, are going to be back on defense in a big way this year. Early last year, they struggled, and then they got a lot better by the end of the year. By the playoffs, they were actually like the best defense in football by some metrics. But this year, I really love the secondary. I just think it's one of the best I've seen on paper entering an NFL season, with Alexander, Hamilton, Humphrey, Wiggins. Just ridiculous. Like, I feel like they can do anything. I feel like they could just match up and play man all day long. I feel like they're creative and smart enough to play a variety of coverages. And Roquan is one of the best communicators, best middle linebackers, feistiest, most physical guys in the middle in football. And they've got Matabike in the middle, who's a game changer. They have good edge rushers, not great, but Van Noy still getting it done. Owe is a good player. Mike Green could be a massive X factor. If they can get a little bit more spark and spike out of their pass rush from a guy like Mike Green, and that combines with the ability to cover in the back end, and I just think they're going to be so tough. I mean, they're an awesome defense, and they were the best run defense in football last year by yards per attempt and by run success rate. This could very well be the best defense in the NFL. I do think that they just lack maybe a little bit in a pure pass rush and a little bit at like linebacker depth at safety, but like not a lot. Like it's splitting hairs. The Ravens could easily be the best defense in the NFL. At number 2, the Denver Broncos. The Broncos are very solid at all 3 levels. Their front 5 is phenomenal. They have DJ Jones, in that nose tackle, helping them stop the run with Zach Allen and John Franklin Myers, who might be the best 5 tech guys in football. And then also like pass rushing from the inside. It's probably the most devastating duo there is. And then you have those edge rushers, Benito and Cooper. Benito is freaking phenomenal. He is fast and freaky and makes a ton of crazy plays. Secondary-wise, they added Hufanga, right? Linebacker-wise, they added Greenlaw. Why they're not number 1, because a lot of people have them at 1, is I think they're a little thin if they lose Greenlaw or Hufanga, and I feel like both those guys are very unreliable when it comes to injuries, and I've seen them get injured a lot. So I feel like if they lose either one of those guys, it's a little dicey for how that will affect the defense, and I feel like there's more of a potential for them to fall off. That being said, that corner position is pretty spectacular. They added Barron to the nickel position. They've got the defensive player of the year in Pat Surtain. Brandon Jones is a really good safety. McMillan and Moss are solid. Denver, I felt like they were really awesome as a defense last year. Maybe had a little bit of a weak schedule. Maybe struggled against a couple different teams. But overall, they can rush the quarterback. They're aggressive. They can play man zone. With Greenlaw in the middle, that makes him a lot faster if he is fully healthy. And it's going to be scary. It's going to be scary. They were great against the run last year. Good as a pass rush sack team. Scary unit at number 2. At number 1, I have the Houston Texans. They're my choice for the top defense in football in 2025. I just really like the Texans as a unit. I feel like they have arguably the best pass rush in football because they have Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter. And on top of that, they've got spectacular edge depth. And I feel like even when they lose one of those guys at any given moment, they can easily overcome it because they have, it's hard to say easily with those top 10 edge rushers, 2 top 10 edge rushers. But they have, really good depth that guys can fill in and make plays. And then you've got a guy like Danico Autry on the inside for sub packages. Their pass rush is just unbelievable. That was maybe Justin Herbert's worst game he's ever played from a statistical perspective, or one of them. And it was all because they couldn't get blocked. They weren't blocked. Even last year against the Chiefs, they didn't do shit. It was just the offense couldn't block anybody of the Kansas City Chiefs. And really, they only struggled in one game last year against a legitimate offense, which was the Ravens. And I think their only real subtle weakness is their interior defensive line against the run. And that's a very specific and very niche thing, but I could see them actually getting better here. They did bring back Sheldon Rankins for that position as well, and it feels like they're actually a little bit better at that position. Their linebacker position is super deep, so it feels like if they lose a guy, unlike the Broncos, if they do lose a guy like Al-Shaair, they've got Christian Harris, they've got To'oto, however you say his name. They've got EJ Speed. They've got 4 starting linebackers on their team. They've got 3 or 4 safeties that can play, And I think CJ Gardner-Johnson with Jalen Petrie, talk about absolute animals, absolute animals. Stingley and Lassiter on the outside. Think about what they did last year. They totally dominated the MVP. They totally dominated Jared Goff in the best offense in football. They really didn't allow Mahomes to do anything. And they still lost. And they dominated Justin Herbert. Again, the only game really where they were actually decimated was that Ravens game. And it was kind of a one-off because of, Derrick Henry ran all over them. But other than that, and Lamar ran all over them. But, that's it. And I feel like they're going to be better this year. And I think they've got a very good scheme, but it's very replicatable. It's not a defense that's completely reliant on scheme and smoke and mirrors. It's a lot reliant on talent, but at the same time, they just do just enough creativity to put them over the top under DeMeco Ryans. So that's where they're my number 1. Thank you guys for watching, man. Hour and a half once again ranking these teams. You knew the defenses was going to be long, but I thought I covered as much as I could. Appreciate everybody tuning in, and thank you so much for watching. Gronk, spike the like buttons. Don't be a jabroni, and subscribe. If you enjoy these rankings, please let me know in the comments. I put a lot of effort into them. Thank you for watching the whole thing. Peace.